January is here, and that means it's time for Cramuary, where you take your big New Year's resolution-sized goal and accomplish it by cramming it into one super productive month. It is possible. But even if you plan to do your Cramuary goal in a different month this year, you can still be a part of my Cramuary by becoming a patron. I'm expanding upon 24 subjects that don't quite fit into the upcoming Your Creative Push book and offering those pieces of writing to you, my patrons. Not just to hopefully inspire you, but also to get your feedback and direction for upcoming YCP short episodes, the YouTube channel, and further content. Head to yourcreativepush.com/Patreon to support the show and to be a part of the upcoming, much more interactive Patreon experience. And thank you so much for your support. Your Creative Push, episode 319.
The golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But I take that in art and I would say, give art to others as you would like to receive from them.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is John Guydo. John is an illustrator from New York City who makes these amazingly beautiful alternative movie posters. And he comes on the show today to talk about his artistic journey and how he got to the point he is today in creating these posters and all the other work that he does. He talks about how he realized that he missed drawing after doing a lot of work in graphic design and web design, and then the way in which he started sharing his work on social media and why he decides to share intricate, detailed shots of what he's working on. John also tells us the story of the long-term project that he's working on with poet David Herrstrom. Then John gets into what he's doing now, doing these alternative movie posters for movies like Blade Runner, Batman, and the new posters he's working on for the Marvel Cinematic Universes to celebrate their 10-year anniversary. And he also talks about the challenges that he's faced in working on those posters with so many characters. John also discusses this very important idea about not thinking about his work as a career, but rather as entertainment, and why you should too. And then John gets down and dirty talking about some of his resistances, such as working digitally and also incorporating color into his work for the first time. He talks about how he overthinks the business aspects of creating art and also dealing with overwhelm. And then finally, John talks about how much time he spends before he even makes the first mark to make sure that he's happy with the composition and the idea overall, and why maybe you should think about taking time to think about those things as well, and also the importance of creating things that you want to see rather than catering to what others want. I had a really fun time talking with John. He's such a chill guy. And it was a pleasure to talk to somebody that I've been trying for a very long time to get on the podcast and whose art I have hanging on my own wall. So please do enjoy my conversation with John Guydo. John, welcome to Your Creative Push, man.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to kind of cap my night off with a conversation with you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So let's do it.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome. I always like to give my guests the opportunity to kind of give their like a brief creative bio, sort of how you got to the point you are today in your life and in your creative life.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist, illustrator. I've been drawing all my life since the earliest time I can remember. You know, and then I went to school, and I found out eventually toward the end of high school that, hey, wait a second, people do art for a living, you know, whether it's graphic design or advertising or even illustration. So I said, well, that's definitely what I want to do, because I didn't want to go into any kind of office work or anything like that. It just seems like hell to me. So, you know, I went to the School of Visual Arts. I majored in illustration. While in school, I began working in graphic design and web design, doing a lot of freelance stuff, which I really enjoyed. It wasn't what I really wanted to do, which was illustration, but you know, it was a good way to earn money. And so I did that. I graduated. I was still doing that, but eventually I began to just miss drawing because I was just doing so much of that. And I guess I had some grandiose idea that eventually I would just make millions of dollars and I could just draw all day. But I realized that wasn't going to happen. So I just had to force myself to spend a lot of time. It really wasn't forcing myself because it's really my favorite thing to do, but I just had to put aside other time commitments to draw. And really, this was kind of like the dawn of social media. That really helped me a lot because drawing in your own sketchbook is one thing, but having an audience, it really changes things. And I think it's good. It's like, oh, people get to see it and comment. And so that really helped a lot. I started publishing my drawings on Tumblr mostly at that time. So I started to get a little bit of a following there. And then I started a project with a friend of mine who's a poet named David Herrstrom. Those illustrations, some of those went viral. And I'm still, actually, that's like a long-term project we can get into later if you want, but that's like a long-term project that is still going on. But some of those illustrations went viral, and some galleries and companies began reaching out to me, wanting me to do illustration work with them. So I really transitioned and started doing a lot more illustration work, which has just been great for me. It's been a lot of fun. It's my favorite thing to do in the world. So since then, I've had the opportunity to work with Warner Brothers and Marvel and DC, and I have some other in the pipeline. So it's been great. I've been done a lot of work with Bottleneck Gallery and here in New York. They're in Brooklyn, and the people there have been fantastic. But yeah, that's like a quick recap of my creative history.
Right. And the moment I like the most is where you realize that you kind of miss drawing. You know, you have to do things to make money, of course, and, you know, college and school can take you on a different journey as well, and maybe not the direct path that you were maybe hoping to get to what you're doing today that you love. But what was it like? What was that kind of moment or series of moments like where you kind of realized that you had to, I guess, put more practice in, or just set aside that time for yourself? Like you said, it's like the thing you like to do the most. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I think it would make a better narrative if I said it was just some epiphany and then but it was more of a gradual thing. I mean, throughout the entire time since college, in college I was drawing a lot because I took drawing, we'd have 6-hour drawing classes. You're just sitting there drawing nudes and things like that. And then after that, I was just really like in career mode. But every once in a while, I would just have like, these urges to just put everything aside and draw. And so like, if I go back and look at, pieces that I did through that time, it's interesting because I would do one and then like there might be a date scratched in the corner and then a long gap, months and months. And then I would do another, I would do another piece. I mean, I always have sketchbooks and stuff, so I'm always just sketching a little bit, but not really, through that time, I wasn't really taking it seriously until like I would have these moments or just like, I don't know how to explain it other than it was just like a compulsion where you just like had to do it. And then eventually, I guess it was largely because of that project I worked on with that poet that I started like researching. This is it's about these creatures and beasts from the Bible. And he had worked on a project in the past with an incredible illustrator named Jacob Landau. And on a similar project, not about the beasts of the Bible, but another biblical illustration thing. And I was looking at his work, and that really inspired me to become more serious about it. So it's hard for me to like nail down, a precise reason or a precise moment, but I can just kind of tell you what led up to it. Yeah.
Well, I think that compulsion is a good word, and I think we all get that. It's just important to get back to it, even if you do look back when you open up your sketchbook and you see, oh wow, it's been that long.
Right.
As long as you don't close it again, as long as you're just like, all right, well, it doesn't matter, like nowhere to go but forward,
Exactly. Interestingly, I don't know if you found this or any of your listeners, but for me, sometimes a little bit of a break can be good. You come back with fresh eyes, like if you ever feel like you're spinning your wheels or everything, it's not necessarily a bad thing to take a little bit of a break, but I wouldn't recommend, taking off huge swaths of time.
Right. Oh, it's definitely necessary for sure. It's
Right.
just trying to, I guess, strategically insert them when you have enough experience to realize that either you're suffering from burnout or you just, it's not there. Like you don't have that compulsion.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Now, when you were starting to share some of your work on like Tumblr and stuff like that, were you just simply taking photos of your sketchbook, or were you making specific things that were geared towards, okay, like this is something I'm going to share on Tumblr, or was it more of just like a
Mhm.
snapshot of, oh, here's what I've been up to?
I did a little bit of both, but I'm a little bit like, I don't know how you say it, like sketchbook shy. Like
Yeah.
I don't like to reveal like all my part of it because it's not. I feel like other people would look at it and not necessarily see it in the way that I mean it. If you like when I start a project, if I showed you like a lot of it would look like chicken scratch to you. Like
Mhm.
honestly, like I will be literally like about to fall asleep at night. It's pitch black, and I'll have an idea that I don't want to miss out on. So like I reach over, grab my sketchbook, and I'll jot like a thumbnail sketch that like only I would ever be able to know what I meant by it. So my sketches go from as rough as that to super complex, right before I would do a final rendering in ink. So, as far as posting on Tumblr, I mostly would post finished pieces, but I also did post some of my pencil renderings that were pretty tight. I didn't post a lot of like incredibly rough stuff.
Right. Yeah, and bravo to you. You're one of my heroes for being one of those people who has a notebook by your bed and then has the is able to push past that. Oh, I'm so tired. I'll remember this idea in the morning. Like, and just being like, okay, whatever. I got to get this down, even if it's just chicken scratch. Even if I'm going to be the only one who remembers this or understands this. Like, it's so important to do, and I think it's like one of the keys to living that creative life, and also to just keeping all your ideas and not letting them to kind of slip away into dreamland.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly important, and I really shouldn't be a hero to you because I have lost many good ideas because I thought, oh, I'll just remember in the morning, and it doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah, well, I got you, but hey, it's a good habit to get into.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um, Now, is that also kind of similar to like on your Instagram nowadays? You share, it's almost like little teasers, like little details, of you don't share the entire image, but like a close up of perhaps like the thing that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's two reasons I would do that. One is the gallery would want me to put out a teaser.
Hmm.
They'll ask, it's not ready to be published yet, but they want me to put out a teaser, so I'll just put out like a little detail image of it. And then a lot of it is like a lot of my work is like I spend a lot of time on like little intricate details that, for the most part, when if you looked at a zoomed out version of the image, you would never take note of. So I like to, and also I don't come out with like a ton of stuff. It's not like I have a print coming out every week. So because of that, it gives me more to post by showing some details. Some maybe some parts of it I liked, or just some zoom in shots of each piece.
Right. And I want to get into specifically what you're up to today and like your alternate movie posters and stuff like that. But since we were kind of on the topic already, can we get into that the poetry project that you're doing, like the kind of the long term
Oh
thing
yeah, I
with
would I
Dave?
would be I would be thrilled to. I mean, he would be able to explain it much better than I can because he's like a master wordsmith, and I'm the exact opposite. Like I definitely feel very comfortable like in the visual realm, but as far as like explaining myself or describing things, I'm not as good. I wish he was here to chime in. But yeah, I mean, I can give you a little overview if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
So both Dave and I grew up in very strict Christian backgrounds.
And were you friends before this?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's actually interesting. A very good friend of mine, Dave, the poet, Dave Herrstrom, is his uncle, and
Oh, okay.
so we met that way. And then he is this amazing writer and also a big art fan himself. And he, like I said, was very close to an illustrator. Your listeners can look him up if they're interested. His name was Jacob Landau. He did these amazing illustrations. I don't have all his whole portfolio here, but I mean he did a lot of biblical illustrations. He worked with Dave many years ago on these poems based on the Bible. He
Hmm.
has one on Jonah, I believe, and anyway, I was looking through that and talking to Dave about it, and it really, inspired me to want to do something similar. The other thing is that I'm a huge fan of Gustave Doré and Albrecht Dürer, these engravers who took on the biblical stories. So this for me was a great chance to kind of get into that genre a little bit. It's not really something that's explored a lot these days either, so that was also a fun idea for me. We basically, the way the process works is we have a list of these beasts that are in the Bible, and we would discuss between us which ones we wanted to do and which ones so we'd kind of say, okay, we're going to start working on, let's say, Leviathan. For some of them we'll work independently. Like I'll take the passage and do my own sketches to what I think is interesting about it and what really jumps out to me. And then he does the same thing with words. And sometimes we'll just go with that. And this is my interpretation, and this is his poetic version of it. And then at other times he'll start with the poem, and then I will take that and kind of work my piece off of what he's saying, which is another interesting way. So it's kind of a free form dialogue, if you will, between me and him. And it's not something that, we don't have a publisher for it or anything. This is really just a labor of love that, eventually we'd like to, put it in book form. Yeah. So it's just been kind of a fun project.
And you said it kind of went viral. Once that happened, did that change the way that either you or he approached each piece?
Well, ironically, the only thing that it going viral has done is kind of slow the project down, because it kind of brought a lot of opportunity for me illustration-wise, to have more projects. So we've had to put a lot of it on hold. And, it's the same for him. He's an author. He's a published author, and he's in the midst of writing actually more than one book. So, we've had a very casual understanding together that, listen, we're not going to put pressure on ourselves to get it out at any particular time. And we're just going to, when we have the time to do it, we're going to do it. And so I think in 2019, there'll be a lot more progress on the book. But yeah, it's definitely ongoing, and I'm excited about it.
Very cool. And when you started the project, was there any expectations that this would lead to other doors opening for you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I was not this was just like, me wanting to get back into illustration more seriously. And I had no expectation of success whatsoever. So, like I said, social media really is to blame for that. It was through social media that I was able to get this kind of an audience. I mean, I remember while I was doing strictly graphic design work, I would send out portfolio pieces to, I don't know, to agencies or to anything I thought there was an opportunity where I could kind of break in to illustration. And I never really had a lot of success. And I'm definitely not cut out to be a salesman of myself. I've always hated job interviews. This is just not my thing.
I think many people can relate, myself included. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think social media has been, for me anyway, has just been fantastic, because I haven't, people have kind of come to me, and I haven't had to go out and really sell myself like you used to have to do.
And that's a super inspiring thing, I think, for people too, like that the gatekeepers have lost their power in a way.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go through that ridiculous process of just setting yourself up for rejection after rejection after rejection until the eventual yes. Now it's more like you can do something like this project, like you describe it as a labor of love. You can pick something that you want to do to either practice your skills or just put yourself out there, and then literally do that, put yourself out there, and kind of you can go off in a million different directions, and who knows with the butterfly effect, who's going to find you, what other opportunities are going to come your way. Like, it's a huge, big question mark as opposed to just this rejection,
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many artists that, I've discovered through social media that I love. And, it's just, I can tell, like, it's not the type of art that I would have ever seen in a professional setting. before the dawn of social media, it's almost like they are able to teach. Social media now is able to teach like corporations like what people are actually interested in. So you see a lot of really unique, really interesting art that I don't think would have been possible without this kind of this kind of social media platform.
Right. Well, I think this is a great segue into those opportunities that did come up for you, and what were some of those, and what projects did they lead you to kind of create?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of different opportunities, people reaching out for different things. Obviously, the thing I've gravitated toward are the alternative movie posters. I only like to work on subject matter that I'm a fan of. So the idea that I could do, the Blade Runner piece I did, for instance, did that alongside of Bottleneck Gallery and licensed by Warner Brothers. That's just a movie that I'm sure a lot of your listeners also, I've just always been very, very inspired by. I love it. I guess partially because it's like, I think of it as a visual movie. That's a movie I could watch with the sound off and just love it. So yeah, that's an opportunity that came up, and then I did some comic book style things for Warner Brothers. With for DC, I did a Batman piece of the Tim Sale, the Batman: The Long Halloween.
That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorites. So it was just an honor to be able to work on that, and lots of different things. I have we can talk about later. I have a new project with Marvel coming up, celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So very excited about that. Yeah, I mean, what's another thing that's nice is that Bottleneck Gallery I've been working a lot with, they really give me a lot of creative freedom. They let me propose, pitch them ideas on, I'd like to work on this project. And usually if they have access to the licensing, usually the answer is yes, which is really great. For the most part, also, when I work on these, I don't have really firm deadlines. It's kind of like I can do it at my own pace. And I'm the type of person that likes to really obsess over things, but sometimes too much, actually. But I like that because then I'm not thinking about it and this is the case, I think, for like everything I'm doing. I'm not thinking about it as a career at all. And when I do, if I sink into that, it's a negative. For me, it's entertainment, because this is really my favorite thing to do, is to create art in one way or another. So, I have to think about it almost like entertainment. And that's why, a lot, like if I post a piece on Instagram, let's say, one of the most common responses I get is, "Oh, how long did that take you?"
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't like time it. And if I actually did time it, it would probably be way more than what people would expect, because I just obsess over these things. Or I might work on it, be 90% done, and then just scrap it and start over, because it's just fun for me. It's I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend, and she's been a guest on the show, and a future guest, Sandra Busby, and she was talking about how that very thing. It's like you love the process of doing it so much, and she loves doing the process of, making her painting so much, that she almost doesn't want it to end, and she spends so much time in the details, right, because she enjoys being in that place. And it's like, when you're in that place, you're not thinking about, okay, I need to get this thing finished, or I need to move on to the next phase of this painting, or I need to move on to the next painting. It's just like, no, like, I love doing this right now. Who cares? Like, that's like when the time vanishes, and that's like what it's all about. So like, why not spend as much time as you possibly can in it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that with art, the time put in and the hours are almost irrelevant. Trying to hire an artist and pay them by the hour, I don't really think is fair, because, an artist will, and this isn't just me, I've talked to a lot of my friends who are artists and other people. And, if I'm just walking down the street, to be honest with you, like a lot of my energy is just looking around and thinking about ideas, seeing something that I'm excited about that I'm later gonna try to incorporate into a piece. And all of that is time as well. So I just kind of feel like you're always, if you're a visual person like that, you're kind of always in that space where your entire life is taking in information and trying to improve your skill set or your portfolio.
Right. if you're doing it right.
Yeah, if you're
Trying to
doing
live
it right.
that full creative life as opposed to like bits and pieces, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it kind of comes to you though. Like I'm not like what I don't think of it like exercise or work. Like I said, it's fun. So it's walking around and looking at something. It's just like the natural thing for me to do, and I'm sure for a lot of people. I don't know how else to describe it. I think once you what I'm trying to say is once you get into that mode where it becomes work for you. For me anyway, in my history, even doing design work, that's where I really run into problems. If it really becomes work, or if you're working on a project that you're not interested in, just to get a paycheck. Listen, there's a lot of people that do that and can do it really, really well. I'm just talking for me personally. That becomes a real grind. You have to try, I guess, try to find something fun in it or something that's interesting to you about it. But to me, the greatest projects to work on are things that you yourself are interested in because that brings the motivation.
Right. Well, now speaking about the posters specifically, how exactly does that work with licensing? I mean, I always assume that you can't just, pick any movie you want and make an alternative movie poster or even just art and then sell it. But how exactly does licensing work? And especially when you're talking about working with like Bottleneck Gallery and they might have the licenses for it or not. And then how does like the money work? I know this is a lot of questions, but then like how exactly is the money divided?
Yeah. So basically the gallery will have relationships with various studios that they work with a lot. And to be honest, I don't know. I couldn't tell you all the legal background behind that. I just know that the gallery will basically tell me, okay, we have access to this particular suite of films from this studio, and they'll send me the list, and then I'll say, oh, well, this one sounds interesting, and they might say, yeah, that one's not good for one reason or another. There's a lot of complications in it. Like, for instance, they may have licensing to the film, but they might not have access to the faces of the actors,
Mm,
which is why in a lot of alternative movie posters, you'll see that. You can tell that they have to show a particular character from the back or something like that. And it's also probably why you see a lot of maybe that's why the whole minimalist movement came out of
right.
that, where they didn't have the rights to all the details of the actors' faces. So you have I don't know. I'm just guessing here, but
That sounds like a good guess, though.
yeah, I have no idea. And then it goes from there, and then it gets divided up. The studio takes a percentage, and then what remains you split with the gallery financially. I assume that other artists have different arrangements, and then they'll do, as far as the release goes, they'll either do a limited edition, so they'll print X number of them, or a timed edition, which says, hey, this will be on sale for the next 2 or 3 days, whatever that time limit is, and they'll sell however many orders that come in. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an
Yeah.
overview.
No, for sure. So then you basically get like a list, like you said, and something piques your interest, and you're like, okay, I want to do this. And then the next step is they're like, okay, well, you can do this movie, but here's the things that you can't do for it. Or are they more, do they kind of integrate themselves into the art itself? Like, are they like, well, we would like this character, and this character, or this scene, or anything like that? Or is it just like, here's what you can't do, go for it?
Yeah, I think it depends. Very much depends on the film. There's some of them that it seems to me that where the studios are much more flexible and much more open to your ideas, and then some of them are extremely tight and very particular about what you do. And sometimes the gallery itself will come in and say, "Hey, I think it would be really cool if you did this," or. But like I said, I mean, they've been very open with me, allowing me to like explore my ideas. I mentioned before, I'm doing this Marvel piece for the 10-year anniversary of the MCU, and that one, for instance, I'm using a lot of characters from the first 10 years, basically since they started till now, of all the different Marvel films. So I just used a ton of different characters, and they basically, it's kind of a funny story. Like Marvel gave a list of these are the characters you can use, basically, so I would know there were some I can't use or that they, for whatever reason, didn't want. So I took that to say, oh, okay, I can choose from these characters and do a poster that I like with those characters. But when I started putting it together, like my first sketches for it were pretty minimal, which I kind of liked. But
Right.
then the gallery Bottleneck was saying, "Well, we think it would be great if you could put this character and that character in." So I was like, "Okay." So I'm trying to work with them, and we're going back and forth on it. And then before you know it, every single character on that list is in the poster. So now these are very big posters. There's actually two. There's one for the heroes and one for the Marvel villains. And
Oh,
I
cool.
pretty much have every character that was on the list in there in one way or another.
Awesome. My wife and I, before Infinity War, the month and a half leading up to it, because I had seen a few of the Marvel movies and she had seen maybe one,
Hmm.
but we went and we literally just rented all of them. We
Yeah,
watched them all leading up to the movie and then went to see Infinity War. It was about a month into Infinity War being in. We were a little bit slow going, but that was like all of our TV watching devoted to it. So I am very excited for these posters.
that's cool.
But that's what they do. They do want to jam as many characters as possible into it for the viewer's pleasure. So it makes sense that
Yeah,
they'd want all of them to be in there.
and honestly, I wouldn't have been okay with it if I wasn't happy with the way it turned out. As it turned out, something about the composition for me really clicked as being like a very dense, poster with lots of things going on. It changed drastically from what my initial thought behind it was, but I'm happy with it. So hopefully everyone else will like it.
So, how many versions would you say you went through? And then, how far into each like version do you get? Is it like a very rough sketch and making sure that the scene is set the way you want it before you start,
Yeah, I
going
mean,
in and doing those details?
yeah, it's interesting with like for instance, I mentioned the Blade Runner before. Like that I did as a one pencil sketch in a sketchbook, and we submitted as the sketch, and it got approved. Yeah, and there are likenesses in it, like Harrison Ford, but only two in that poster. So I was able to just do quick, rough sketches that basically resembled the characters, the actors. But in this one, there's just so many. So I had to go to like a different technique where I basically made a Photoshop collage based on images from the films, and I put that together in black and white, just so they could see the raw composition of it, and that's how we did the sketches, because the amount of back and forth we did was I couldn't give you a number, but it was a lot. I mean, during the heart of it, multiple times a day, or moving things around a little bit, and I simply could not have done that by sketching it. It really had to be done in Photoshop, so that's what we did.
And was that difficult for you? Like, obviously that's not the way that you usually do things. What was that kind of back and forth type of thing like?
It's interesting because I'm really familiar with working in Photoshop and Illustrator. I've been doing graphic design for many years, so for me, it wasn't difficult to work on that. It was a little bit strange because I have the iPad now, I'm able to draw on top, and that was new for me. So I'm putting this like photo collage together, and then there's elements that I'm sketching on top of it. That's still like a new frontier for me, working digitally, because as far as illustration goes, like again, getting back into this like art as entertainment thing, like for me, like putting the computer down and picking up a sketchbook was like stress relief, and that's like when I can enjoy myself and have fun. So like the computer, like even the iPad, I don't think of it as like a fun thing. So, but honestly, it's very, very helpful, especially in the initial sketch phases of it. And now I am using the iPad a lot more, even in the finished artwork, especially because of color, which is also kind of a new horizon for me. I mean, for most of my drawing career, if you want to call it that, I've just been doing black and white, pen and ink, and incorporating color has been like a real challenge, and a fun challenge, but a real challenge on how to accomplish the mood of the piece that I'm going for, and doing all that digitally. So but the iPad has really come in handy.
And now through all these things, you sound very chill. Like you sound like a very chill artist that doesn't really stress too much because you are, just in the zone, so to speak, and you're just kind of in that entertainment zone where, you just love being there. But do you find any kind of resistances peek their heads, and do you ever struggle with anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not always that chill. I do get stressed out. I think that, like I said before, when finances come in and when it becomes more of a career, I get held back by that kind of stress or that kind of overthinking of things. It's fun for me just to sit there and sketch, but when I'm like, oh no, people are going to be judging this and they're going to be trying to sell it. What if it doesn't sell? You can start spinning your wheels, and overthink it. Also, sometimes, I'll have too many ideas. I'll have, like I said, these like chicken scratch sketches. I'll come down to like 3 or 4 that I really like, and I want to do all of them, but I know I can't. Even within a project that I'm already starting, like how am I going to approach this area of it? I'll spend way too much time just kind of going back and forth, and I guess I would say one of my resistance is like coming up with the final decision on what I'm going to do, because ultimately you can only do there's only going to be one image at the end of the day. I can't do alternate versions of it. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It
Um,
does, yeah.
so
How do you end up making that tough decision sometimes?
that's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer for it. I mean, ultimately, like it's like the anthropic principle. Something's going to end up on that paper. So, um, it's like it's going to happen. I guess I pick the one that I'm most happy with, and I go with it after a long, anguishing struggle.
Right.
But but yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, you eventually have to make the decision. But I mean, my wife can tell you, like, I'll literally do like very detailed renderings of a piece of a poster that will take me, I'm ashamed to say, like a week or more, and I'll just at the end of the day say, you know what, like I don't like this. I want to do it again. So like I've done that many times, and on some things it goes a lot quicker, and some things I have an idea of where I want to go with it, and I start working on it, and it really like immediately works the way I thought it would. So, but again, like a part of that is stressful, like I said, but a part of it is also I'm doing that because I enjoy doing it. So it's not. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining in any way, because like being
Right.
able to work on these projects is it's like a blessing. So, but yeah, there are times that I come into this resistance, and like I said, usually it's like the stress of what other people are going to think about it, and you kind of have to put that out of your brain.
Now, if you don't mind, can you take yourself back to maybe that painful place of being a week into working on something and then having that moment where you're at an impasse where you're like, I think I should scrap this. I think a lot of people have been there. Maybe sometimes they feel either pot committed, like, all right, I've already put all this time into it, saying that it's a failure now, or that I need to move on to something different, or a different decision, or a different way. Now is kind of admitting that that week was a waste.
hmm
How do you make that decision to scrap something?
Um, I mean, it's a lot of this is just like very simplistic. Like if I'm not happy with it, I have something in my mind usually about how I want it to look, and there oftentimes it will not end up looking like that, but I'm still happy with it. Maybe there's for other reasons, but there's a lot of times when I'll just be like, this is not what I'm going for. I'm not happy with it, or sometimes I'll find myself as a project rushing, and I'm like, you know what, I didn't spend as much time on this element as I should have. I'm just going to go back and do it again. Most of these posters are done in pieces, so I'm not doing these as one continuous piece of art. Usually, I'm doing the components of them, and then using Photoshop at the end to put them together. So it's usually easy enough for me to scrap one component and redo it and put it back in there. I am working on a project now, actually, that it's not like that, where it's another film poster, and it's the entire thing is done on one large piece. But that's not usually the way I do it.
And you also mentioned the fear that, will this sell?
Yeah.
Have you ever had an experience where they didn't sell, or is it sometimes the opposite where it sells out too quick and people are mad that they didn't get it? Because I've seen some comments where people are like, "No, I missed my chance," because whatever went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the limited prints, they only print a limited amount, and once they're gone, they're gone. Or you can try to get them on eBay. A lot of my posters I've seen on eBay, but yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I've been pretty lucky that the stuff that's come out has sold out, so that makes me happy. But there's always that fear that the next one won't.
Sure.
Yeah, and on the flip side, the Blade Runner was a good example. That one, it went on, and I'm only answering this because you asked it, not because I'm trying to brag, but that one went on Bottleneck and it sold out in like a couple minutes. It was just gone. So
That's awesome.
So that one, I still have people all the time messaging me like, "Oh, are you going to reprint that?" Or well, and the answer is no. I wish. I mean, I myself only have one of each. There's the original and then there's the variant. So, and I want to keep those, but
right.
But yeah, that was my experience with that one.
Yeah, and it makes sense because if you say limited edition and then people got it,
Yeah,
and then you print it again, it's like it kind of not devalue. Well, yeah, it does devalue the limited part of it.
yeah. I mean, I might end up doing another Blade Runner one. I mean, that one. It's kind of funny when I signed up to do that. That was like a very meaningful project for me, just because I love the film so much. What you end up seeing there is it's probably like the closest I've ever had to like having the idea in my head of what I wanted it to look like before I ever even drew a line. And it really came out almost exactly like what I wanted. So I'm happy. And that's not the case with a lot of pieces, but that one in particular did.
So beautiful when it just, the paint comes perfectly on the page, or the ink comes perfectly on the page, or the words come spilling out of you, or the music comes exactly as you had it in your head. It's like those are the moments you chase. So it's great that it was such a positive experience for you, because it did end up becoming such a beautiful poster, man.
Thanks. Thank you.
How is the Marvel MCU poster series going to go? Is it going to be limited or a limited time? Or?
I believe it's going to be a timed edition.
Okay.
And I will be putting out more information as I get it. I'm not exactly. I'm pretty sure it will be released before the end of the year, but I'm not 100% on that.
Cool.
I wish I had more information to give on that. I posted a few teasers from it already, and a lot of people are messaging me asking me about it. So
yeah, starting to get antsy, man.
Yeah.
Well, but by the time this comes out, it'll probably come out right before the poster is released, and future young men will have all the information for y'all if you want to get it.
Great. That sounds good.
And before we get to the final push, I wanted to ask you a little something about time, because balancing time is something that a lot of people struggle with, whether you're creative or not.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you are able to lose yourself in the art when you're making art, and enjoying yourself so much, but then also knowing in the back of your head that you have to do other things to make money immediately, perhaps, or tend to your wife, or all the other things that kind of life throws at you. Do you have kind of a formula for balancing your time, or a strategy?
I mean, I can explain to you what I do. I'm not sure it's like really good.
Please do, though.
But I mean, for me, I think the hardest part is to actually getting started, because like I told you, I spent a lot of time, like before, if I'm going to work on a project, I spend a lot of time just thinking in my head about what I would like to see. So I actually I consider that time. Like that's, even if I'm just walking down the street, and then I do a lot of research. I look at like what other people have done. I look at other just posters that are in kind of the genre of what I want to do, or, so it takes me usually a long time before I actually like put pen to paper. And I think for me, that's a real struggle. Like I really need to lessen that and get started on these things quicker. We can get into this also, but to me, like the most important part of the process like happens before you ever do put pen to paper, or it's almost like I feel like the most important part is like the first thing you do, and then everything you do after that gets less and less important. Like the composition of the piece to me is the most important part of the piece. So what I'm doing, like sometimes a gallery will say, "Oh, well, give me 3 or 4 sketches," and I'm
Mm.
thinking like, well, for me, I don't know how other people work, but for me, like I don't want to just quickly brush through a sketch because to me, like I'd rather spend hours and hours and hours really because that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be working on that composition now for the next X number of period of time. And it's so important to me that that composition is something that I'm happy with. So I would say like one of the things about balancing my time is just like being able to get to the point where I can put pen to paper and start with those sketches. And then after that, like once I actually begin, it's just work, work, work. Like I work obsessively on these things. Like I have to force myself to get away from it to go to sleep. It's just a lot of fun, and it's like I can't really think about anything else. Maybe this is teaching me a lot about my psychology as I talk about this. Maybe
Good.
these are bad
Yeah, I
things.
like
I don't
it.
know. But for me, it's kind of like once I get into like a finished piece, like I said, I might work on it a lot, throw out an element that I just spent a long time on, and get back into it. But no matter what, it's like a marathon where I can't stop myself. So I don't know if if it's going to help anybody.
Well, I feel like I'm very similar, and for me, like that whole brainstorming process, I
hmm
guess I would call it.
hmm
Um, for a long time, I thought it was like fear based because I was like afraid to start because I am quite the same way. Where it's like once I start, I know that I'm going to be off to the races until it's kind of finished.
Right.
And also just being afraid to start on the wrong foot or you have this kind of idea in your head, but then once you start, and if it does end up being something that you don't want to continue with, that idea, it kind of dies, you know? So it's like while it's still in that kind of brainstorming process, like the dream is alive, you know?
Yeah.
It's not a reality, and there's something kind of romantic about it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just I don't know. I would just encourage people to. It sounds too simplistic. It's not. It's nothing like really like amazing here. It's just really just work really hard on it for a long time. That's been my way of doing it anyway. I can't speak for anyone else.
You do what works, you know? What works for
Yeah.
you won't work for anybody else or not everybody else, but you got to just do what's worked in the past and keep trying.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. John, this has been amazing, but it's time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best final words of advice and really push them to pursue their own creative passions.
Okay. I mean, I'll do the best I can. I think that like a lot of what I said before is try to focus on things that you enjoy or things that yourself find interesting. The golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But take that in art, and I would say, give art to others as you would like to receive from them. So do the type of art that you like, do the type of art that you would like to see on your own wall so that you will be interested in doing it. Don't try to cater to any kind of a trend or what you think other people want to see. That I think would be a mistake, at least it was for me. The only type of success that I ever found was when I stopped trying to be successful and just started doing the artwork that I found interesting to myself. And then a little bit of success came along.
I love it. Yeah. Like we said before, that labor of love, do it for yourself, do something that you'd be interested in because who cares about anybody else if especially if you're kind of just starting out, who are you doing it for anyway?
Yeah, and I think that other people will see that genuineness. I really believe that I have a lot of different people that I follow that I'm interested in their artwork and everything, and so I'm looking at a lot of art all the time, new artists or things I haven't seen before, and you can see it when you see a lot of derivative pieces or people trying to get into the vein of something else, and then all of a sudden you come across something that you've never seen before, and it's totally unique, and you can tell this is a person just doing what they love and what they find interesting. And I think that the viewer can sense that authenticity.
Yeah, it's impossible to fake for sure.
Right, right.
John, man, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story, and inspiring us today. I really appreciate it, my friend.
No, thank you so much. I loved it. It was great to do it.
Awesome. And for anybody listening, you can find out more about John at his Instagram, John Guydo, JohnGuydo, or you can head to Big Cartel, johnguydo.bigcartel.com if you want to pick up some art. And we'll also have everything we talked about today and everywhere else. You can find John at yourcreativepush.com/John Guydo. John, thanks again, man.
Thank you.
My thanks once again to John for coming on the podcast. This was a conversation that I've been waiting for a very long time, and it definitely delivered so many great things in it. But the number one thing that stuck in my head after re-listening to the episode was his discussion about his own creative process. I think it's something that we can all relate to. When you get this idea, you let it stew in your head for a long time before you finally sit down and start it. And I think sometimes we look at this as a negative thing. I know I certainly did. It's the whole thesis of this podcast was the fact that it took me a couple years to build up the courage to start my Words Plus Music project. But sometimes it does take a long time to think about exactly how you want to approach the particular project that you are about to embark upon, especially if it's a long-term project or something that you haven't quite grasped. The trick is figuring out that line of when you need time to really work things out in your head before starting, and the difference of that compared to continuing to push the thing off because you're scared to start because of what might come out of it. That's something that you figure out through practice. That's something that you figure out through years of doing it, of doing these weird things that come into your mind that need time to actually come into the world through your hands and through your body or through your mind and spirit. But don't be ashamed if it does take you a long time, if it is a longer process for you to get started, as long as once you do get started, it is off to the races, like John said, that all that time was spent in a valuable way as part of the creative process, because then you know exactly what you're doing. Not exactly what you're doing, but at least you have a good idea of how to get going. On the flip side, if you're listening to this and you know that's a familiar idea to you, that you do take a long time to get started, but you don't have anything in your portfolio, that you actually haven't created anything out of it, then perhaps that's bad advice for you. You need to, as soon as you get an idea, start fleshing it out, start getting it down on paper or down in an audio recording or however you get your work done. It's okay to use that long amount of time, but make sure that it is valuable time that is actually part of your creative process and that you eventually get to work. And if you are interested in purchasing John's 10-year anniversary Marvel Cinematic Universe posters, you can head to Bottleneck Gallery. It's bottleneckgallery.com, or you can get to that direct link at yourcreativepush.com/MCU. On our next episode, we have Marie Noelle Worm. Marie Noelle is an artist, illustrator, and puppeteer. She is also a Skillshare teacher, and she comes on the show next week for what is quite possibly my favorite episode of Your Creative Push. We talked about a wide variety of topics about the creative process, about resistances, and about putting yourself out there on social media and getting to the work that matters most to you. It was such a delight to talk to her and to listen to it over again. And I know that it's going to knock your socks off as well. If you want to find out more about Marie Noelle and check out her art, you can head to her website, marienoelleworm.com. That's WURM. And on Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, all the places, she is Marie Noelle Worm. But we'll also have that linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/319. But that is all I've got for you today. So hopefully you were inspired to go and get your creative work done. So go and get it done. I hope that 2019 has started off with a creative bang for you and you are creating some amazing stuff. I love you all so much, and we will see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.